Cara, with the Super Bowl coming to Univision in 2027, along with expanded soccer and Formula One rights, wanted to know, how does premium sports content shift advertiser perceptions of TelevisaUnivision beyond culture and language?
Well, I think first and foremost, sports today is, living everywhere, and it's important to have sports right in your platform. But we've built that kind of relationship with our consumers through soccer. And what you mentioned is now we have the Super Bowl in Spanish language in 27, which is like around the corner. And we're building relationships with MLB, and we also are building relationships with F1, because sports isn't just about soccer. There is an inflection point, but we essentially know that reaching consumers across multiple different sports is important for Hispanics and Spanish language. So that's why we're really striking some of those relationships. But we also believe that sports are not just one night. It's 52 weeks a year. So we reach and have sports every single week, with soccer, and with some of the things that we talked about that we're announcing. We have 97% of live viewing, and then 50% or more unduplicated reach. So that means they're not watching MLB on another channel, they're coming to us. And that's like the authenticness of the Hispanic consumer. They trust us, so they come to us for that reach and relevance, and then they go out and do watch in other channels, but for the most part they come to us first. And that's why we're striking multiple different opportunities in sports, because live is important. And the Super Bowl will be one of them for us.
Let's talk a little bit about TelevisaUnivision's household graph. How does that proprietary data asset help brands reach those large amounts of Hispanic audiences that you bring in? And how do you do it in ways that programmatic and maybe third-party data can't?
Most of the measurement companies today, third-party companies, are missing our audience by 50%. That's a huge gap in terms of reaching and getting to a 4 trillion, GDP number for Hispanics. And so what we're doing at Televisa is making sure that we're meeting them with culturally relevant content, that we're working with the measurement companies to close that gap, but most importantly, using our first-party data to close that gap with the partners. And we're making sure that they understand the relevancy and the attention that we can drive for Hispanics, because we understand them. Well, I spoke about it a little bit earlier, that the third-party providers are missing 50% of the audience, and so are some of the MMMs. They're missing if they don't have that data, right? So what we did was we took signals and third-party data sets and built the only U.S. household Hispanic graph. And that is across both Spanish-speaking and bilinguals, so that we can better authenticate and reach audiences for our clients. We know data is like one of the buzzwords that everybody talks about. If you match our ID graph with others, you can better reach the audience almost at 100% with using our ID graph. So it's really relevant. It is helping us basically reach the consumer even further in our marketplace. And, again, that unduplicated scale that we have, that graph can essentially allow us to reach them further.
So, Karen, another way you tap into that scale for advertisers, I believe, is the VIX 360. It's a CTV ad platform that you've been scaling across the portfolio. How does the breadth and scale of that product change what you can offer advertisers, in both in terms of reach and the types of campaigns that you can execute?
Well, we know the consumer is consistently switching from linear to digital, but I will say linear still remains strong. It's still probably 50% or more of essentially everybody's audience, and it still does resonate with consumers. But with VIX, that's our extension. That's where content continues to live on. That's where we're creating new content. That's where we have VIX Musica. That is where we have some of our temples being simulcast. And it's really following the consumer, but it's a way for us to authentically use the ID graph that we just talked about and reach 45 million Hispanics and grow that incremental reach for our clients.
What separates authentic Hispanic marketing from brands just translating their English language campaigns into Spanish? How does AC Studios kind of help you do that?
AC Studios is literally a team that is built from the culture of the brand. And they are, they are Latinos that live and breathe that brand. So they are able to essentially build campaigns that are authentic to our consumers. One of the things we know our clients struggle with the most is they're creating English language creative. They're not necessarily creating Spanish language creative. We can help them. We can basically take their English language creative and make it authentic. Or we can create something that is authentic using maybe the brief, but making it authentic in Spanish language. And that team just lives and breathes and knows the culture and knows what the consumer wants to see, so they can work really closely. In a lot of ways, we're, those 75 brands that you're talking about, we're some of almost their creative AOR. We're working with their creative AOR very closely. So there's a lot of great ways that we can make a Spanish language creative that resonates and that is authentic with our brand, with the brands, and with our consumer.
Cara, Hispanic audiences are shaping mainstream culture and driving U.S. economic growth. It's really been building for the last 2 decades, if not more, particularly in the way that advertisers and media companies see it. How should advertisers think about Hispanic media investment as a specialized buy or as essential to reaching mass audiences in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked a lot about it, but I think it's authenticity. I also think there's a ton of unduplicated reach. In sports, we just talked about that. It's almost 50%. In general, 45 million Hispanics we are reaching, and we can authentically reach them better with our household ID graph. And essentially, Aussie Studios, right, is building that creative to also be relevant and authentic to the Hispanic consumers. And there's a $4 trillion spending power. They just moved up above Japan in terms of being the 4th globally recognized GDP. So if you want to reach Hispanic consumers and you want to reach them authentically and you want to reach them unduplicated, you have to come to us, and you can't get home without us.